All right, let's jump right in today. We're going deep on Rocket Lab, and, well, they might just be on their way to becoming a real powerhouse in this whole space industry thing.
Yeah.
We've got their Q4 and the full year 2024 financials right here, fresh off the press, plus all the presentations and those investor call insights.
Mm.
And the big news, revenue's gone way up.
Oh, yeah.
Like 78% year over year, which puts them at a cool, what is it, $436.2 million?
Wow. Impressive.
Yeah. And both of their main segments, the launch services and the space systems, they're both doing really, really well.
They're firing on all cylinders.
They are. But here's what's really got me interested. Rocket Lab isn't just about launching satellites anymore. They're looking at, the whole enchilada, the whole space operation,
Yeah. What I find really interesting is this whole end-to-end approach they've got. That could be their secret weapon.
Oh, tell me more.
Think about it. If they control everything, from the launch to the systems in space and even how they get used, they're not just cutting out the middleman.
Right.
They could streamline costs, keep everything on schedule, and grab an even bigger piece of that space market pie.
Okay, I like that. So let's unpack this a little. We know Rocket Lab has those two main parts, right?
Yeah.
Launch services, which jumped 74%, and then space systems, which, wow, rocketed up 80%.
Yeah.
Those aren't just, numbers in a spreadsheet. We're talking about real missions and real partnerships here.
Got it. And those partnerships, they give us a peek into where Rocket Lab might be going next.
Okay.
Take, for instance, the NASA Escapade mission. You know, the one to Mars.
Yeah.
Well, Rocket Lab is building the twin spacecraft for that.
Oh, wow.
And then there's their work with Varda Space Industries. They're launching a mission that's all about manufacturing, but in space.
In space.
Yeah, they're not just launching anymore. They're pushing boundaries.
That's pretty wild. And speaking of pushing boundaries, we got to talk about Neutron. That's their medium lift rocket, right? Seems like 2025 is going to be the year of Neutron, especially with all those constellation spacecraft. They need to launch thousands of them in the next few years.
You've hit the nail on the head. The space industry has a real bottleneck when it comes to medium lift capabilities.
Ah, I see.
Rocket Lab, though, they're projecting that Neutron could launch, get this, more than 10,000 constellation spacecraft in the next decade.
Wow.
Trying to, ease that bottleneck.
Ambitious. But I've heard, there have been some whispers about delays in the launch schedule for Neutron. Isn't that kind of a red flag?
It's true. Developing a rocket like Neutron, that's a massive undertaking.
For sure.
And Rocket Lab has been very open about, needing to make some adjustments.
Right.
They want to get it right. And they still plan to launch Neutron later this year.
I see. What's really cool to me, though, is that Neutron, it's not just another rocket. It's reusable, which, think about it, has huge implications for costs, bringing those costs down. And it can handle all kinds of payloads. From scientific research to commercial ventures, it seems like a real game changer to me.
Reusability is the key. It could significantly reduce the cost of getting to space,
Yeah.
which opens doors for more players. And being able to handle different payloads, that means Neutron works for a wider customer base.
Makes sense.
So Rocket Lab is becoming like, a one-stop shop for all sorts of space missions.
I like it. Now let's switch gears for a minute and talk money. Their Q4 performance was solid, good gross margins, and that adjusted EBITDA. And for anyone who doesn't speak fluent finance, that's essentially how we measure profitability.
Yeah.
But what really popped for me was that $1.07 billion backlog.
Oh, that backlog. That definitely signals a strong demand for what they offer.
It does, doesn't it?
But their CFO, Adam Spice, he warns us about the lumpiness of revenue.
Lumpy.
Yeah, because of the nature of those big government and commercial contracts. It's something to keep in mind when we look at the whole financial picture.
So it sounds like they're expecting a shift in revenue when Neutron comes online, with launch services maybe taking the lead.
Exactly. Right now, Space Systems brings in the biggest chunk of their revenue.
Right.
But as Neutron gets going, with launches becoming more frequent, we can see launch services making up a much larger portion of their income.
Interesting. It's obvious they're putting a lot of resources into Neutron.
Yeah.
Especially, in the research and development department.
Right.
Is that risky, though? I mean, given how complex this project is?
Well, there's always going to be some risk when you're doing something this big in space.
True.
But Rocket Lab's been pretty transparent about the money they're spending on R&D for Neutron.
Okay.
And they're expecting those expenses to go down, though, after that first launch.
Makes sense.
Because then their focus shifts from, developing it to actually producing it and getting it operational.
Right.
They're also moving some of their engineers, the ones who are on the R&D side, over to production
Oh, interesting.
as Neutron gets closer to launch. It's a strategic shift in how they're using their people.
That's pretty fascinating how they're managing that whole transition.
Yeah.
Speaking of transitions, let's move on to their space systems segment. And this new Flatellite thing they've got,
Oh, yeah.
it's their answer to, how do you mass produce satellites for these mega constellations that everyone's talking about?
What's really impressive is how they design the Flatellite.
Yeah.
It's all about making it easy to stack and deploy them efficiently.
Okay.
Their goal, to produce several of these every single week.
Wow.
And they're even thinking they can get to the point where they're making one a day.
One satellite per day. That's incredible. How are they going to pull that off?
They're using the infrastructure they already have.
Smart.
And they've already scaled up production on some key components like those solar panels and the reaction wheels.
Oh, I see.
So they can really focus on that final assembly and integration process.
Right.
They don't have to start from scratch, It's a pretty smart strategy, using what they're already good at.
Okay, so we've got Neutron maybe revolutionizing launch services.
Potentially.
And then this Flatellite, which could shake up the satellite manufacturing market.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
It is, but what about the overall financial picture? Beyond just the revenue growth, are they healthy?
If you look deeper into their financials, it's clear that Rocket Lab is being strategic
Okay.
about how they're going to secure their spot in this rapidly growing space economy.
Which is getting more crowded every day.
It is. And one thing that really stands out to me is their commitment to operational excellence.
What do you mean by that?
Well, they're streamlining all their processes,
Okay.
making everything as efficient as possible.
Mhm.
It's almost like they're taking those lean manufacturing principles and applying them to space.
That's an interesting way to think about it.
It is, right.
And it makes sense, too, considering how competitive the market is.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're also really focusing on getting the best talent and then keeping those people.
Which is absolutely essential in an industry like this. So high tech.
And their workforce has grown more than 25% since last year.
Yeah.
That says a lot about how well they're doing at attracting those talented people.
It does.
It seems like Rocket Lab is attracting those people who are really passionate about, space exploration and innovation.
Yeah.
And then they're nurturing that passion with internal programs and things like that.
It's like they're building a community.
It is. Sounds like their company culture is a real strength.
I think so.
But let's not forget about, the risks involved.
Right.
Space is a challenging environment.
It is.
And Rocket Lab knows this. They acknowledge the hurdles they face, everything from launches that could fail to just unforeseen events, technical glitches, you name it.
And they've been upfront about these risks in their financial filings. They highlight potential issues with suppliers, launches going wrong, even cybersecurity threats.
Oh, wow.
It's a good reminder that no matter how carefully you plan, unexpected things can pop up in an industry this complex.
You just never know.
You don't. And they even mention things like, what's happening geopolitically, like the conflict that's still going on in Ukraine and how that affects supply chains globally and the stability of the market.
Right, right.
These external factors, they can have a big impact on their business.
It could.
It shows that they understand the bigger context of what they're doing.
Oh, for sure.
Rocket Lab knows that their success isn't just about what they do internally.
Right.
They have to navigate this constantly changing world.
It's a lot to juggle.
It is.
And then, of course, there's the financial risk.
Of course.
They've been open about the fact that they've had losses in the past.
Yeah.
And they're making significant investments in growth and R&D, which, profitability isn't guaranteed.
Especially in an industry that's still emerging like this one.
Right, right. So that's where their focus on financial discipline and making those smart decisions comes into play.
Exactly.
They're balancing these big growth plans while keeping a close eye on their bottom line.
It's a tricky balancing act.
It is.
But it's crucial if they want to be sustainable in the long run.
I'm also really interested in how they're handling their intellectual property, all that, all their innovations and stuff.
Yeah, they seem to be using a multifaceted approach.
Interesting.
They're combining legal protections, contractual agreements, and internal practices.
So they're covering all the bases.
Yeah, to keep your innovation safe.
It's smart.
It's a practical approach.
Yeah.
Because they recognize that protecting intellectual property in an industry that moves this fast is complicated.
It is. It is. It's not just about patents, right?
No, you need a culture of security and vigilance within the company.
You do. You do. They've also been very upfront about how they're using those complex financial instruments.
Oh,
Like, the capped call transactions that are tied to their convertible senior notes.
right. Now, those can be risky.
They can.
but they're using them strategically
Okay.
to manage their debt and any potential dilution.
That level of transparency is pretty refreshing, especially in an industry that can be, a little opaque sometimes.
It can.
It's a sign that they want to keep their investors in the loop.
Informed.
Yeah, even about the complicated financial stuff.
They're not trying to hide anything.
I like that. Overall, it seems like Rocket Lab is taking a very strategic and measured approach to, navigating this whole space industry.
I think so. And what's particularly cool is how they're mixing that cutting-edge technology
Yeah,
with sound business practices.
right.
And they're really emphasizing the importance of people and their company culture.
It seems like that recipe's working for them so far.
It does. But what does it all mean for our listener?
Right, right.
Why should they care about Rocket Lab's performance and these big plans they have?
That's a good question.
This deep dive, it gives you a look inside a company that's at the forefront of this new space race.
It's not just the government anymore.
Exactly. Rocket Lab isn't just launching satellites.
Right.
They're building a whole ecosystem for stuff that happens in space.
It's like a whole new world.
It is. And whether they succeed or fail, it has implications for the future of space exploration, scientific discovery, even national security.
That's a big deal.
It is. And it reminds us that space isn't just for governments and those giant corporations anymore.
It's true. It's true.
Companies like Rocket Lab are making space accessible to more people.
Democratizing it.
Yeah, making it possible for smaller businesses, researchers, even individuals to be a part of this.
That's amazing.
It is. And it's worth noting how committed they are to transparency.
Yeah,
They don't shy away from talking about the risks and the challenges.
they're being on it.
They're inviting investors and the public to come along for the ride, to share in the wins and the losses.
I like that. I like that.
That approach, it builds trust and confidence, which are essential if you want to be successful in the long term.
Absolutely. Especially in an industry as complex and as fast-moving as space is.
Right. So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, think about what we've talked about.
Yeah, take a moment.
What stands out to you about Rocket Lab's story? What parts of their business model, their technology, or their culture really resonate with you?
Good questions.
What questions do you have about their future and what it all means for the bigger picture?
Think about those things as we head into the final part of our deep dive.
Where we'll explore some of the bigger trends that are shaping the space industry.
It's going to be good.
And we'll look at the potential impact of Rocket Lab's, pretty ambitious plans.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Rocket Lab's financials, those ambitious plans for Neutron, the Flatellite. It's been pretty impressive.
Yeah.
But I think it's time to zoom out a bit. Take a look at the bigger picture. This whole space industry is changing so fast.
It really is. What we're seeing, it's a revolution.
A revolution, huh?
Yeah, think about it. Private investments pouring in, new space companies are popping up everywhere, and I think people are starting to realize just how much potential space has.
Yeah, I mean for everything. From those big scientific breakthroughs to, commercial uses.
Right. It seems like every day there's another announcement about some company launching satellites, developing new tech for space, or planning these crazy missions.
It's true. It's a pretty exciting time to be following all this.
It is. And Rocket Lab, they're in a great position to ride this wave of innovation.
Yeah, I can see that.
That end-to-end approach they have, controlling the launch, the systems in space, even how it gets used, that gives them a real edge in this, this evolving market.
It's not just about competing, though, is it?
No, you're right.
Seems like collaboration's a big part of this new space race, too. Rocket Lab's working with NASA, with government agencies, and all sorts of commercial partners.
Yeah.
Pushing the boundaries, all of them together.
Their work on that NASA Escapade mission to Mars, that's a perfect example. They're also teaming up with companies like, Varda Space Industry.
Oh, yeah, the space manufacturing thing.
Exactly. To figure out what we can do with manufacturing in space, it could completely change how we build and operate up there.
It's pretty mind-blowing when you think about it.
It is.
And we can't forget about sustainability either.
Right, that's important.
Developing reusable rockets like Neutron and making sure they're minimizing their impact on the environment, that seems to be a core part of what they do.
It's a crucial part of how we explore space now.
It is.
It's not just about getting to the stars anymore.
No.
It's about doing it responsibly.
Thinking about the possibilities, it's pretty amazing. With companies like Rocket Lab leading the way, I could see a future where all these space-based technologies help us solve some of the world's biggest problems, like climate change, communication, even how we manage our resources.
Yeah. Exactly. Imagine a world where we can use space to create clean energy, to to track the health of our planet in real time and connect people even in the most remote places.
It's amazing.
It is, right? These are the kinds of big changes that Rocket Lab and all these other space pioneers are working towards.
It's a future full of potential, that's for sure. But it comes with some serious challenges, too.
It does.
As we've seen in this deep dive, Rocket Lab's facing those challenges head on. They're bold, they're innovative, they think strategically, and they're really committed to their mission.
They're not just building rockets and satellites.
What are they building then?
You're building a future where space isn't some, distant frontier anymore.
Yeah.
It's part of our everyday lives.
I like that. So as we wrap up this deep dive into Rocket Lab, here's a thought, Fringle. Rocket Lab's making a big bet on the future of space. Are you ready to join them?